This is VOA News. Hundreds more men, women, and children are making their way out of the last corner of the Islamic State's self-declared caliphate in Syria on Thursday. This as the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Force expressed hope that this would be the last of the Islamic State's followers after U.S.-backed forces sieged the northeastern Syrian village of Baghouz more than a week ago. U.S. officials still warn many more IS fighters may be lurking in the tunnels beneath the village. Beijing is ramping up calls for political loyalty as an economic slowdown stirs unease within the Communist Party. Eve Johnson has more.
A show of allegiance at China's annual session of parliament this week. The ruling Communist Party is ramping up calls for loyalty amid an economic slowdown that has the leadership worried about its grip on power. Leading the call, President Xi Jinping. Reuters' Ben Blanchard says officials at the National People's Congress are eager to show that they've got the message.
This year at Parliament, President Xi Jinping's name really has been everywhere. A lot of delegates and ministers have really been falling all over themselves to make mention of President Xi. We even had the customs minister talking about how President Xi himself was paying great attention to the issue of banning foreign garbage imports into the country.
China's Communist Party has ruled the country for 70 years and has given up little control during that time. In fact, it's recently doubled down.
Eve Johnson reporting. U.S. President Donald Trump's former personal attorney and fixer Michael Cohen is suing the Trump Organization for legal fees and money spent on behalf of Trump's business empire that he's now being forced to forfeit because of an ongoing criminal case against him. Cohen claims he is owed $3.8 million from Trump, who he recently described as being a con man. This is VOA News. The commander of U.S. forces in Africa has cast doubt on whether the Pentagon will complete plans to cut forces in Africa by 10%, as the Department of Defense announced late last year. The reductions, officials said, were to optimize special operations forces that would be needed in a potential conflict.
And whether we'll ever be directed to execute the second half is to be determined. And the final point I would make is what we have told the Secretary is that every one of these decisions will be made individually, and if we feel that it's not in our best interest to do so, we will reclaim and push back on the plan that's in place at the moment.
That's Marine General Thomas Waldhauser, the head of U.S. Africa Command. He told lawmakers Thursday that he's already reduced force numbers in Africa by about 300 soldiers. However, commanders appear to be rethinking plans to cut additional troops from the continent. U.S. lawmakers have overwhelmingly approved a resolution condemning anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred and bigotry. This following an acrimonious debate over a Muslim congresswoman's comments about Israel policy. The measure did not reprimand Minnesota freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar by name after her remarks that several lawmakers deemed anti-Semitic, but it did condemn hateful expressions of intolerance that are contradictory to U.S. values and aspirations. Omar recently referred to pro-Israel advocates in the U.S. as supporting allegiance to a foreign country, and she questioned the financial clout of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, a highly influential lobby group in the U.S. that supports Israel. President Trump says time will tell if his brand of diplomacy with North Korea will bring an end to the country's nuclear development. AP's Jackie Quinn has the story.
The president admitted to reporters he was a little disappointed hearing there's new activity at a North Korean research center where it's believed long-range missiles are built. It follows the abrupt ending to his talks with Kim Jong-un in Hanoi at the end of last month. But President Trump says time will tell if the U.S. can persuade Kim to give up his pursuit of nuclear weapons in exchange for sanctions being lifted.
We'll see. We'll let you know in about a year.
A senior official told reporters the Trump administration does believe it can secure a deal by the end of the president's first term. Jackie Quinn, Washington.
The power outages that hit most of Venezuela Thursday continued into early Friday. Large crowds of commuters had to walk for several hours to their homes because few buses were on the streets and the metro system was shut down. This is VOA News.